Hello everyone, Jacob here, also known as Big Yellow Praxis, here with another episode about underrated music, where I discuss underrated music with people. It's really quite simple. I'm joined this week by my friends, Rebecca and Felix. Do you want to just say hello?
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
This week, this episode, we're talking about like album art. I've already done one episode on album art, and this is kind of another one. I'm probably going to do a few because I like album art. I think it's cool. I think it's not necessarily that important these days, given like Spotify and everything, but it's still a good thing to talk about. And we're talking about like quite a wide range of A albums and B styles of art, I guess. So yeah. Firstly, I'm going to start very general. How important is album art to you guys?
It's quite important, but like it's the sort of thing that if you're in like a record store, you would definitely flick through and just stop on something and go, "Oh, that's cool," even if you knew nothing about it and the band might be shit.
For a graphic designer, I really don't care that much about album art, which I'm aware is very weird. Like everyone on my course is like, I want to work for XL Recordings, and I'm like, eh.
I don't find that weird because as an English student, I don't care that much for lyrics. Do you know what I mean? And so I think it's a similar thing, right? It's kind of maybe I'm also weird. Maybe we're both just weird. Is that how it works?
I think it's kind of like I would have cared about album art like in the 80s or earlier. But it's also the fact that it's like, well, I don't own records, so I guess the CDs were kind of cool when I was a teenager, but like it's not that important anymore.
I do tend to agree. I've definitely, when I was a teenager, when I bought CDs, I definitely bought CDs solely because I thought they looked cool. And it's like, I feel like it's relatively 50-50 on whether you're going to be successul on that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that's actually a good album. Oh wait, why did I buy this? It's cool art, but it's actually really terrible. And I just think now, like, I sometimes mourn the amount of money I spent on CDs as a teenager, which I don't think was as much as maybe some people, or I guess some people who were older than us, but I still have some, and I just don't know why I
have so many CDs.
Do you have them?
At least.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I have a few CDs, and I brought them home with me here last time I went to my mum's house, and I was like, maybe I'll, because some people still insist like, oh, CDs are better than listening to Spotify because it's higher quality. And I was like, I'll try it out. Literally, I have no way of playing CDs. I have nothing. Nothing.
Yeah. Do you know how we play CDs? Because like we don't have any CD drives. PlayStation 2.
Well,
it's the only thing that plays CDs.
I was gonna say we have a PlayStation 4, and I was like, oh yeah, PlayStation 4 will play CDs. No, it doesn't. It just doesn't.
What?
Really?
Yeah, no, I thought it would, but I've got no way. I just have no way of playing CDs, so I have them. And like, so the thing about the album covers, even CDs aren't that big, are they? Even a nice piece of art, it's like this big. So
yeah,
in a way, we're all of a generation where like, and anyone younger than us will be in the same situation where like album art isn't all that important. But that doesn't mean there's not good album art. I still think there's good album art, and we're still going to talk about it. So even though it's a bit pointless, I've kind of shot myself in the foot here with this episode. Even though it's a bit pointless, and we don't care, we're going to talk about it anyway.
I'd still choose like most of these records and like have them as actual records. Like I think there's a lot of other things that are CDs where if you blew up the artwork, it'd be like, whatever. But
yeah.
These are quite nice visuals by themselves.
Yeah, so I think the ones we've all chosen, we'll get to the actual specifics in a second. I think the ones we've all chosen are actually good, and it is kind of a shame that it's not much of a thing anymore. But we can get into that. So we've got 6. We've got 2 choices each, and we're going to start with one of Rebecca's choices, which is The Streets.
Original Pirate Material
by The Streets. And the song that you put in the playlist, just as an example, was Has It Come to This?
Has it come to this? Original pirate material. You're listening to The Streets. Lock down your aerial. Has it come to this? Original pirate material. You're listening to The Streets. Lock down your aerial. Make yourself at home. We got these lost.
So I didn't know this song by The Streets. I only knew their like big hits. Like, was this one of their big hits? They had a few, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, maybe not necessarily. This is on their first album that got them like mega famous.
Because I remember all the ones that were like, I think you are really fit, you're fit, but my gosh, don't you know it? That was one, wasn't it?
That was not one of their best.
Yeah. Then there were a few that were like, so before we get onto the album art specifically, like I only knew a few songs by the Street Seven, but like he's not. It's mainly one dude, Mike Skinner. Is that right?
Yeah.
But he's not just like a comedy dude, because like the biggest songs that I heard were like funny songs. But he's not just like a funny guy, is he?
No.
Right. Okay. I wanted to clear that because I was listening to this and I was like, oh, it's not like funny. It's not a joke like the ones I knew.
No, but I think because a lot of his songs are very kind of about just like sort of everyday life that's slightly mundane. It's like there is a lot of humor in it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Fit But Don't You Know It is probably their most like comedy song.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like it's a very British thing as well. Like, I don't know. Like we're always a bit ironic or something. So yeah. But so I didn't know the song. I'd never seen the album cover. But yeah. So do you want to tell us a bit about it, Rebecca? Because I know literally nothing about it. Do you know anything? I assume you might know something.
I can't believe you know nothing about this. Where have you been? No. So this actually is probably one of the like main exceptions to me not ever being that into album art, where I feel like this album, I don't know, it sort of really stuck with me. I think part of it is that I keep thinking about it more recently because so this was photographed actually kind of close to where we live, but there's another building that looks very similar in the park down the road. And at night, whenever I say night, like in the evening, if you're sat in the park, this building just looked like the album cover. And so there's something, I don't know, I always find quite funny of just like seeing how realistic. But in fact, so the photograph itself was by Rotlicht Luxembourg, who was a photographer, and she just took it as part of her MA. But she said she stood on a tower block opposite to get this photo, and she wanted to take the photo sort of from the perspective of you take a portrait rather than like looking up, which you'd normally do for buildings. And so it's kind of like a bit more intimate and sort of like looking into these people's lives. And I think I just quite like it because it almost feels like the songs, because they're about like sort of everyday life, it almost feels like the songs are the stories from the people within the windows you see.
I mean, I knew who he's from London, right? Mike Skinner. I knew that. Like he has like a.
He's from Birmingham.
Is he from Birmingham? I don't know.
Hey, he did. To be fair, he made this album in London, so he had moved to London by this point.
Right. Okay. I see it. It's one of those things that well, look, in 2002, I was 11. Everyone who was like south of Manchester was London. Okay, like whatever. Forgive me.
To be fair,
well taught.
I missed this when it came out because again, it's like 10. So I became a huge fan like way after the fact and was like, "This is great," and everyone's like, "Yeah, we know," and it's like, "Oh, okay."
I was gonna say like, yeah, I looked at it and I was like, well, it's like such an English like. It couldn't be anywhere else in the world. It just because we're used to seeing those types of buildings, and it totally fits like with his music and his style, which is like it's like slice of life English Britishness, really, I guess broadly, but like, like. But I like because there's like the orange color. It's not depressing, whereas a lot of the time when you see photos of council blocks, they look so depressing. Whereas this somehow has a coziness to it.
Yeah, there's like a lot of life that's kind of going on.
Yeah.
And there's things happening in lots of different places.
Yeah,
no, that's a good point. I didn't think about that, but yeah, I did like vaguely register it because it is cozy. It's because it's orange light and it's nighttime. I guess when it's nighttime, it's not just like a grey. I assume the building is actually grey, right?
I think sort of like greyish, whitish.
Probably like color. That horrible pebble dash concrete with white. So
yeah.
So
like at night you don't notice all the horrible pebble dashing, but it's like, oh, it's nice and like warm and orange light and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I didn't realize you guys live so close to it though. That's quite cool.
Yeah. No, it's only.
So it's near King's Cross, I think.
Yeah.
On City Road.
Yeah.
So it's geographically not that far, but like I wouldn't just go for a walk there for fun.
Yeah. The album is not like a. You say like you kind of think of the stories or whatever the songs about the people in it. It's not a concept album, is it? I guess, but it kind of no. I was just wondering, but it's all a similar kind of slice of life and lots of I don't know. It's to call it every day is almost an insult, isn't it? Like I don't mean it in a patronizing way because it can sound like it's every day, but it's not. I think you guys know what I'm saying because you said the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, because like Has It Come to This song, like one of the most iconic lines is "sex, drugs, and on the dole," which
right.
I always quite like. It's just like that is just them living.
Yeah. I quite like that actually. Ooh, was that in this song?
Yeah.
Oh god, it completely passed by. See, I never listened to lyrics properly. It's a real problem of mine, which I think is probably one of the main reasons. Like, I can never fully get I like a bits of rap and like hip hop, but you really need to. I think usually you have to be more into the lyrics, which again I know maybe a bit weird as an English student, but they just kind of. Even some of my favorite songs, I could not tell you what the lyrics are. So even with this, I picked up on bits of it. I heard lots of drugs. Yeah, I heard lots of drugs. That's the main thing I picked up on. I am genuinely that oblivious when it comes to lyrics.
Yeah, I think the more you listen to rap, the easier it is to pick it up as well. Because otherwise you're just like, what? I can't quite. Oh, it's too fast for me to pick it up.
Yeah.
Or like if you look at the lyrics that have been written down, it's like, wait, these are the lyrics for that song. I didn't know that.
But I've done that for like some songs I really like anyway. Like, because there's so many songs where if I'm singing along, I'm just singing like what it is phonetically.
Yeah.
And then you look at the words and you're just like, oh my god, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm completely wrong. Like, I was singing nonsense. I was singing absolute just sounds, and you read the lyrics like, oh,
so you'd be the person singing like Ken Lee.
Ken Lee, 돌리고 뒤보 달죠. Ken Lee, medio mo. Ken Lee, 돌리고 뒤보 달죠. Ken Lee, medio mo.
No.
Yes, I mean, I think. I actually think that's an improvement over the actual lyrics anyway. So but it's a good point because like the more you listen to like a genre, the more you actually get used to its, I don't know what you'd call them, it's the idiom of it, and the more you get used to the way it does things. Because the streets are again like British hip hop. What kind of genre are they specifically? Because they're not the pre-grind.
I think they came out of UK garage, so there's a lot of like garage influence on this record, which is like quite lively and upbeat.
Also, I think a lot of that was then also coming out of all the pirate radio stations that were in these council blocks. So I think it's also quite nice as like an homage to the fact that, I think to a lot of regular people, these buildings are really depressing, but it's like actually there's loads of like music and culture coming out of them. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
You've also got people like Izzy Rascal at the same kind of time, who was like emceeing on pirate radios in London.
I was going to say, I was like, was he the same time? But I guess if he was like a bit more underground at the time, because he wasn't big until like more like 2006 or 7, was it?
Well, his first album came out 2002. So
was it big?
I think 2002 or 3. Yeah, it was. It was enormous. I think it was.
Was it?
I think it went straight to number 1.
Oh, did it? Jesus, I didn't know that.
Considering he was like 18.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite hit Carlisle.
Leave us alone.
Still listen to Donk.
Also, one minor correction: it's pronounced garage, UK garage. But yeah. So I would say like I don't really listen to this genre. So I think I said this when you were on my other episode, Felix. It's like it's hard to like decode a genre that you don't listen to. Which is going to be a nice little segue into the next track, which is mine, which is a nice folksy track. I love my folk. Project Smok, and the song is Mountain Road, off the album Bayview.
I joked that I was like, it's nice to see that the Peruvian panpipers are branching out a bit. And then Felix said it was a little bit Ed Sheeran, so it's kind of like the combination of
You guys are such Philistines. I'm sorry. Felix, give me that statement again. Who said that? You said it was a bit Ed Sheeran. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a little bit Ed Sheeran.
Because there's an acoustic guitar?
No, just the way, like, when it sort of like gets more lively.
Structure of it. Like, I think he probably takes a lot of these kind of like structures and turns it into a pop song.
Right. No, I see what you mean.
And
Right.
then-
So he's like you'd almost call him like folk pop in a way. Like I don't think he actually
yeah.
is, but because he uses so much acoustic guitar, that's what people see him as. But I don't think he's actually folksy in any way, except that one song, which is Galway Girl.
I don't really know what he is anymore. He keeps trying to sort of like move into different genres, but doesn't sort of stick to anything. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
He
To be honest,
knows how to structure a track so it is like perfect pop. It's not necessarily like good or whatever, but it's just like, wow, that's a pop hit.
I agree. I'm not a fan of Ed Sheeran. It may surprise you, but I've had arguments with people who are like, oh, he's completely untalented, and it's like, well, the guy can clearly sing really well, and he can play guitar and like write. Like it's stupid to call. I just don't personally like him, but it's insane to say that. And I think you're right. Like he can structure, and I take objection to it, but I see what you mean with this track. It does have a similar like I don't know trajectory in a way to some of the things he does. I'm being very tentative here, but let's start with the album cover. Have you looked at the album cover?
Yeah.
That is a great shade of pink.
It's great, isn't it? It's very pink. It's the pinkest pink I might have ever seen, in fact.
I really like it.
100% magenta. It's nice.
You see, I quite like. So my thoughts. Well, I don't. This is one of the things. So the two bands and the two albums I've chosen aren't huge, so it's not really easy to look up tons of information about the album cover. So all I really know is that this one was done by a guy called Seth Tinsley, and he does have a webpage and stuff. So I've seen bits of his other art, but broadly, there's nowhere that I can really read much about it. It doesn't have a Wikipedia page or anything like that, and they're quite. I think it's only a couple of years old. This, but to me, as far as I can tell, because they're a Scottish-based folk band, I think it's just. Yeah, I don't know whether it's actually just like a kind of computer rendered and highly stylized.
It is,
like a bay of like maybe somewhere near where they were brought up or where someone lived, or maybe not even a specific place. It's like Scottish Highlands in a way. Well, Scottish Highlands.
Yeah, definitely.
So what I like about it.
Go on.
I was just gonna say, what I like about it is that it has like the whole Scottish landscape, but it looks very modern at the same time. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I also like the fact that if you know that they're Scottish, you get that connection. But equally, it kind of could be anywhere. Which, like, I do like in the music that I don't know, it does have this sort of slight sort of sound of not quite otherworldliness, but as if you're like going traveling or something. So like, I feel like it really fits the music without it being too, this is Scotland. It's sort of more just out in some wilderness.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's not like it's contemporary folk, which is much more. I mean, I like a lot of like old-fashioned, old-timey folk as well. But you can hear the difference. It's not just like a rickety old fiddle player with like an acoustic guitar. Like you can hear the production sounds really clean and like really contemporary. And I think the artwork reflects that.
Fresh, I'd say.
Yeah. And
because as a 3D visualizer, it is a really, really nice render. And like I really like the way the rocks are kind of like glass, and it almost feels quite ethereal.
Yeah.
Because you got like the darkness and softness of the water. That like it is obviously like quite like it's still like the water is still like dangerous and ominous, but it's still very soft and like quite inviting.
Yes, yeah. I'm just googling now so I can get like a bigger picture, because do I see like it looks like there's little bits that are supposed to be seagulls in the distance that you can barely see.
Oh yeah, it could just be dirt on my screen.
No, I was just doing the same thing. I was like, is that dirt on my screen? I was like giving it a little rub, like, what is this? But if you look on the right hand part of the screen, you got these little bits that I assume are supposed to be seagulls. And then the ship itself looks like I don't know, it looks like a steamboat kind of thing. I don't know what the proper word for it is. But yeah, no, I think
like a little mini fishing trawler.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I think you're right. Yeah, like the ocean does actually still like look a bit dangerous, and the size of it all. It's weird that it looks like a cutesy little video game, and it looks kind of like big and dangerous at the same time. I don't know. That's what I feel.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I like how geometric the rocks are as well.
Yeah. I think it's super cool, and I'm still slightly offended at the Ed Sheeran comparison, so I'm gonna have to.
No, but I think that's like you were saying, because they're contemporary and so have that like really clean production versus like most folk music. I think that's what was coming across was this fact that like it does, it's like folk but with like the production of more like electro music.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to say this is part of the reason I put these songs in the order that I did. We don't need to move on immediately yet, but I feel like this is almost like the folk. There's a lot of contemporary folk music that sounds a bit like this, or some of them bring in a few more electronic instruments and things like that, while still having like a flute or tin whistle or like a fiddle or whatever. It's almost like it takes some of the aesthetics or production styles of like techno music, not techno music, but other like electronic contemporary music, and brings it in or combines it with folksy stuff. And that's where it gets that really shiny combination of quite rootsy music. And I really like the combination.
Yeah, so do I actually.
Yeah. Oh, there we. Oh, yeah. You're coming around
all
to it now.
People are gonna hate me now, though. So.
I don't think so. I do actually. I see what you mean. So I'm not too offended. Let's not stick too much on this with this one point. He says, wiping a tear away. But yeah, it's weird. I don't actually know much even about the band. I've listened to this album, and it's one of those things I just listen to as part of like these big contemporary folk playlists on Spotify. But I wish I could actually tell you more about the band, other than like I could have done more research, quite frankly. But yeah, I think it's cool. I think there's tons of actually like contemporary folk music, which sounds, as I said before, similar to this, or in fact even more modern in a way. So there's one called the Olam, and I've done an episode on them previously actually, but they are even more obviously contemporary. They almost sound, I think some people have said they sound like a combination of Radiohead and like folk music, in that they're a little bit more alt rock, and I think they're really good. And they're probably one of the more, they're probably one of the bigger ones compared to Project Smok, who are a little bit less huge at the moment. I say huge. It's all relative in the contemporary folk world.
He's a bit big in the
scene. But I was going to say, so I think it's a good time to move to the third song, which is one chosen by you, Felix, Fall Back by Factory Floor. This is techno, right? Are there any subgenres I'm not aware of that it would fit under better? Because just like with UK garage, I don't really know much about it. I'm gonna keep saying that. I can't help it.
Garage. Yeah, if you ever go to a garage night, somebody will slap you.
I think I would deserve it if I did that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it in public. I just do it in the privacy of my own home and on my podcast, which I put on YouTube. Okay, wait. Yeah. So it's techno, or is there some other subgenre?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not especially great with picking like subgenres or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is made in a kind of an analog way, so with synthesizers and stuff, rather than it being like completely computerized.
Oh, right, I get you. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like there's a lot of loops and like synthesizers where they're like loop this, loop that, twist like dials and shit.
Because it does have a slightly 80s sound to it. but I couldn't kind of work out why, because it's like it's not 80s, but I guess it's that kind of analog way of making it.
What it could be is that there's kind of a difference between there's a way that some people make music digitally where they use the straight samples and everything's like bang on the beat, so it sounds really like 4 to the floor square, whereas if it's analog and you're making it with synthesizers, it's not going to be like perfectly lined up, so it's more kind of flowy.
That makes sense. So I was gonna say I don't really listen to electronic music very much. There's like a few odd pieces, but with something like this, sometimes I can listen. Well, this specific track, sometimes I listen to it a few times, and sometimes I'm listening to it. Quite frankly, I'm like, this isn't doing very much. And then I would listen to it another time, and I was like, this is just way, way too intense. This music is like. I was listening to it, and I was like, is this what a panic attack feels like? Seriously. It's really weird that 1 minute, I don't know, maybe it depends how much attention I'm paying to it. 1 minute I'm just like, oh, this, it's the same thing for like 7 minutes, and the next minute I'm just like, oh my god, like the pressure is rising, and I'm just like, I'm losing it. Like, am I high? Am I freaking out right now? Seriously, and it's really
just
weird
like the bass drums just like hammering on your head, just now.
And I've never had such like two opposite extreme reactions to a piece of music. Is it the most intense thing ever, or is it like quite like relaxed background music? And like, I don't know, is that what techno is? It was a really extreme reaction from me. I was playing it whilst playing a video game the other day, and I think that's when I was just like,
too much mental stimulation, and you're just like, I've got to end some of this. Either stop playing the video game or stop listening to the music.
But it's one of those things like techno. It just, in the same way, like folk music, mostly, like especially traditional folk music, you just immediately feel like you're in like an old pub. Do you know what I mean? Like it just puts you in a specific place. You're like, oh, I can smell like stale beer and on the carpet and all. Like that's the feel you get from a lot of it. And techno music. I say this as someone who doesn't listen to techno music really, but I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm in a club in Hamburg or something like that. It just it just puts you in that place, and I'm just like, yeah, it's very effective music in that regard.
It just makes you want to dance, like not necessarily like I'm gonna do it. Yeah, you just dance for like 7 hours, listening to this kind of thing, and you don't know where the song ends and the next one begins. You just keep going.
Though I definitely find with techno, like there are some songs which I always refer to as like 5 a.m. music, where I cannot listen to it in the middle of the day. So like this kind of stuff is like, yeah, that's fine because you're like, whoa, dancing. But there's some music which is always the kind of stuff that comes out like really late in the night. And it's like, I can't listen to that in 1 PM. It's just too early for me to like be in that state of been up all night. And I'm like, this is not the time.
Yeah. I get you. But the album cover specifically, let's veer on back to this. I think it's really cool. I think again it seems like a really good representation of, again, as someone who doesn't really listen to it, this kind of music, because it's abstract, isn't it? I guess it's not like a concrete thing, and it's I don't know the words, but in the way that the music is synthesized, it's synthetic art, isn't it? It's not a photograph of a real thing, or again, I'm saying it's abstract. And that kind of fits in, whilst also being quite nice and pleasant to look at. But then if you look at it more, you're like, oh my god, that's actually quite an intense splash of color, like in that middle pattern thing. And it's just, again, like it feels like a perfect representation of like, oh yeah, it's really nice. Oh my god, it's incredibly intense.
Like the closer you look, the more there is.
Yeah. So do you know much about the artist, or like what the inspiration behind it is?
I don't know much about the artist because I couldn't really find much about them. But the band were based in like North London when they were recording this. So I think they recorded this when they were in like living and working in like the warehouse districts of North London. So a lot of people just have big old parties and make music, and just that kind of becomes life for some people. And I just quite like the analog side of the art as well. It's quite it really reflects what it's kind of trying to say, like the
Yeah,
music's
yeah.
trying to say, in comparison to the last one, which was like that's completely synthetic and digital,
Yes.
and this is like completely analog. If you see what I mean.
Yeah. I was gonna say like that yellow is like halfway. Like again, I don't know colors. It looks like for me, it's like halfway between like neon yellow and mustard yellow.
Yeah.
And again,
very
it's like
acidic.
yeah, it's like again, I'm like, is that really intense or is that really chill? And I think this is my vibe with this music so far. Or like, is that really chill or really intense? It's kind of both, which makes sense in a weird way. Sorry, I think we're gonna say something there, Rebecca.
No, I was gonna say it's a really good colour of yellow, and it kind of reminds me there was a factory record that they made that was that same kind of colour of yellow.
Right, yeah.
So it always just makes you think of that. But I also like the fact that even though it's like I really like the kind of structured shape, but there is something about it that makes it feel slightly collagey. Like you're not sure if someone's made it on a computer or they literally just took some scissors, stuck it on a yellow piece of paper, and were like, "This is it," which I think is quite cool.
Yeah,
can't work out if it's like if it's like three-way mirror of itself, or if it's just kind of cut to look like it almost is.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm terrible at visual-spatial things, so I have no idea. But it is cool. And totally different to the next album cover. And totally different to the next album artist and song completely in every way, in fact, almost. In every way? I don't know. I think so. I think it's very different.
Yeah.
So the next one is Pink Floyd, Animals, and the song was Pigs. Pink Floyd have incredibly famous album covers. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Like, and they're all pretty. They're all pretty awesome, really. I don't think there's any. Are there any I don't think are good? I think they're all good. Even if I don't like all their albums, I like a lot of their albums. I don't like all of them. All of their albums just look cool and they work. But I don't actually know who. Like, I know Hypnosis did a lot of their album art, but I don't know who did this. Do you know?
So Hypnosis he was involved in making this album art, but they actually didn't like his concept. So it was one of the band members, I can't remember who now. I think I did write it down somewhere. But it's basically one of the band members came up with this concept because he lived near Clapham, and so kept sort of walking past Battersea Power Station, and thought that it looked cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so basically the reason I picked this album was that I liked the fact that essentially it visually is almost, it has a lot of similarities with the album of the Streets because it's the same sort of color. They're both like big buildings in London from like similar angles, but kind of couldn't be more different in terms of the sort of feelings you get from them. But then I also love this album cover because they actually flew this big inflatable pig over Battersea Power Station to take the photo. And they did it over the course of 3 days. But on the first day, they'd hired sharpshooters. So if it basically came loose, they could just shoot it out of the sky. But then on the second day, for some reason, they hadn't hired the sharpshooter. And it did come loose and it shut Heathrow down because there was a giant inflatable pig just flying across Heathrow.
That is fantastic.
And then they apparently got an angry phone call from a farmer because it had landed in his field and scared all his cows. So they just went and picked it up, and then they did it again the next day, but just hired a sharpshooter just in case.
I think I've maybe heard that before, but I didn't actually know all the details of it. I didn't actually even know it was now that I think about it, like looking at it, I didn't realize it was a photo. I don't know, because it looks quite stylized.
It looks painted almost.
They also then did end up, they took all these photos, but then on the final day, like on the third day where they managed to get it all in position, they actually didn't like the way it looked because it was really bright and sunny and it didn't work. So they ended up sort of mixing photos of Battersea Power Station from the first day with the pig from the other day and we're kind of mixing it. But yeah, it ends up looking like a painting because they've also then like styled it afterwards.
Yeah.
So
It's
no,
like-
it's quite.
It's super like industrial gothic, isn't it? When you look at that building.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it feels very dystopic and like kind of depressing.
Yeah.
yeah, which I've heard London in the UK in the 70s kind of was.
Yeah. Especially those kind of areas where like they're just like completely gutting certain areas of town.
Yeah. It actually looks like something that you could imagine in Mordor, like as a building, like those towers. I look at it, it's like
Yeah, a little bit.
has like the Industrial Revolution finally come to Mordor? Is that what's happening here?
Well, it's
So-
interesting because the album itself was apparently loosely based on Animal Farm.
Mhm.
Hence all the concept of it being animals and all the names. But then I also feel like, to me, this album cover almost looks a bit more kind of 1984 with like the Ministry of Love and stuff, where it's like these huge buildings.
Yeah, no, I totally
that's
agree.
interesting.
Actually, it has that kind of like 1984 feel, and
Yeah.
it's weird because I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, but I don't really know much about this album because every time I listen to it, I'm not super keen on it compared to their other stuff. I think this is the best song on the album, and I do like it a lot more. But I don't know why. I think a lot of people some people like it's their favorite Pink Floyd album by a long way. And for me, it's always fallen a bit flat. But it's funny because I was listening to this, and I think this song I think is the best song on the album. And I think for me, the main thing that stood about this song is like it's probably my favorite drumming on any Pink Floyd song. It's a bit like funkier than Pink Floyd get.
Yeah.
So I love Pink Floyd. I think they're great. But my general stance on Pink Floyd is that they are the most boring great band of all time. Like they have that weird vibe where you're just like, this is kind of boring. I don't know why. Do you know what I mean?
This whole album, because like I feel like I knew the album art for this more than I actually knew the album.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to listen to it again, and I'd also forgotten that it is just like 4 really, really long songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started listening to it, and it was like, this feels like this song's been going on for ages. And it's like, I'm 7 minutes in and it's still going. So like, it's a shame because I love the album cover, but I don't love the music. I think it's just a bit.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just a bit. I don't know. Goes on a lot and is a bit depressing. So you get the boring thing.
Yeah, I think this is what I knew of as Pink Floyd, and just kind of wrote them off as like, oh, let's go on a bit.
I mean, they do go on a bit. That's just like the 70s, though. That's just what people did. I don't mind that inherently. I don't mind long songs at all. I like that, but I feel like they're almost trying to do something that isn't their strong point on this album. Personally, like they're trying to go for that like harder rock edge, and they're not. Like my favorite Pink Floyd songs. This is why I say they're the most boring great band of all time, because like they're always like quite slow songs, quite dreamy feeling, and they don't really rock. And I think on this album they try to rock a bit more, and it's just a bit like, oh, it doesn't quite work. But on this track, I think there's some really nice bass playing. I think there's some cool drumming. And I think Roger Waters' voice, I do like his voice. It's a weird voice. He's got like this sneer in his voice. Do you know what I mean? He always sounds like he hates you, like that he would just spit on you. Like he has that, and I think he actually did. I think that's why he wrote like the album The Wall, because he was actually performing. I think they were performing this album live, and I think like he spat on a fan who was trying to get on stage, and I think he was like so disgusted with himself, and it's just like, well, maybe you shouldn't have done it. Like it's great to feel disgusted afterwards, but that's a weird thing to do, dude.
Not to like just push them away, or even to like punch them, but to spit on them. That's definitely worse.
Yeah, it's very contemptuous, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like spitting on someone is definitely like, I'm better than you.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though, also with this album, how I feel like sort of as a sort of loose concept, it's quite interesting how they're both this one and the Streets album are kind of talking about sort of life in London at that particular point.
Mm-hmm.
But they do just come at it from like completely different angles.
Yeah.
And I find that like with the Streets, it's just really relatable. I'm like, oh yeah, I understand that. Whereas the Pink Floyd, because it's sort of, they're describing it, but almost at a distance.
Yes,
I find that it's sort of harder to get into because it's like, we're telling you this story about this faraway land, except wait, that's the city I live in. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love tons of like really long, pretentious, what some people might call pretentious type of like 70s rock. But even for me, Pink Floyd, and that's another problem with them. Is sometimes Pink Floyd, I'm like, Roger, I don't think you're as smart as maybe you think you are. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I probably should be careful saying this on my podcast. Like, if anyone is listening to, if both of the people I think who listen to my podcast are probably like big fans of prog, and I would assume Pink Floyd. But honestly, like I really love Pink Floyd. But sometimes I think with Roger Waters, I'm just like, ooh, you're not as smart as you think you are. And there's nothing wrong with not being smart. But if you think you're super smart and you're not, and it's just like, oh, I don't know, like the allegory is like, oh yeah, pigs and sheep. Oh, you're smart, aren't you? I don't. It's a bit like, oh, I don't know. And I agree. Like the streets, yeah, it's more like everyday and relatable and normal. It's like you can actually just write a song about normal stuff. Roger, did no one tell you this, Roger? Is it always weird? You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't want to shit on Pink Floyd too much because I genuinely love them and I think they are great. But this album always left me a bit confused.
Yeah, I feel like all their other albums I really quite liked. It's just this one dragged on more.
Yeah. But I do think the album cover is, I mean, I think they're all good. They're all like they're uniformly great, but this is probably one of the best ones. And it really does. It's so striking. It's just, you look at it. And to be fair, the mood does fit because it's like dark and gothic feeling, and the music is all quite moody and like gothic feeling, even though it's like rock music. So yeah, like points to them for this.
Quite influential.
Yes,
because I think one Easter egg that I don't think anyone's picked up on is that the power plant of like Battersea Power Plant. Did you ever play the game Red Alert: Command and Conquer?
I don't think I did.
In the 90s.
No.
It's like a strategy game.
Yeah.
But all the power plants and stuff that you build in there literally look exactly like Battersea Power Plant.
That's cool. I like that. As I say, as a kid, as an ignorant Cumbrian kid, I was very confused about Battersea Power Plant and Battersea Dogs Home. I was like, is it in the same building? I always thought like
use them as fuel.
Yeah, that's if they don't get adopted, that's it.
I didn't think that dark. I just thought like it was repurposed into a dog home, and I was like, that must be huge. How many dogs must they have? I don't know when I stopped believing that. Like, I don't think I consciously believed it, but do you know what I mean? It's like in the back of your mind, like Battersea to me is just those two things, and they were combined into one. I must have been like, I could have been like 22 before I realized that I was an idiot. Seriously, I just one day I think I just went, wait, that doesn't make what? Google this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Thanks, Google.
Yeah, because all of my dogs when I was growing up came from Battersea Dogs Home of some way of like previous.
You saved them.
Dogs.
You saved them from being used as fuel.
I did.
Well done, Felix.
Yep.
You're a saint.
I do love the idea though that Battersea Power Station, like if they had turned it into some like dog utopia where there's just loads of like levels for them to play on, like that sounds great.
Yeah, only thing is now they're turning it into like the rich people's playground. I think they're literally going to put a swimming pool bridge across the roof or some shit. Just like real dumb things that don't need to happen. Like, yes, let's do it.
I mean, that is crazy, but I think I've just realized maybe part of the reason this is my excuse for being an idiot and confusing the dog home with the power station. There is a song called Dogs on the album, so I think because my older brother's really into Pink Floyd, so I probably heard this album and I knew there was dogs, a track called Dogs, and it was the power station and there's the Dogs Home.
Yeah.
So my excuse, it's not a very good excuse, let's be honest. That my excuse is that it all got confused into just one big blur. So shame on you, rich people, for throwing the dogs out of the power station. And yeah, that's just not acceptable. But another change in genre and music to my next choice, which was my choice, by a band called Talisk. The song we chose was Echo, and the album is Abyss. what are your thoughts on this? Either the music or the album cover. You can go to either first. Just whatever.
I really like both actually. I really quite like the music. I like the fact that it sort of slowly builds, and like I feel it starts off not sounding that folky, and then it almost gets like more folky as you get into the song. But no, it's really nice.
Yeah, I think this one is less Ed Sheeran-y. Do you know what I mean? I think this one, especially because once it gets into it, it's like proper folksy. It's like, oh my god, it's not like Peruvian panpipes, as you said before. And that's not actually what it is, Felix. It's not Peruvian panpipes, but it's less like that, and it's like full blown like fiddle and stuff like that. But right. I really like the way it built up as well, and I think it's a cool track. I really like this band. They got tons of tracks I like, and I think they've only done 2 albums. But again, they're like a contemporary folk band. I think I'm pretty sure they're Scottish again. Better check this. Don't want to look like a fool. Yes, they are. They are Scottish. Aha, I was right. They're Scottish again.
I'm assuming Talisk is a place in Scotland, perhaps where Talisk whiskey is from.
Well, because I totally
am I just generalizing
this before you asked, and I'm not just googling it right now. I have no idea. You Google Talisk, and it's just the band. So. Who knows? But Talisk whiskey, that's a thing. Maybe they just named it after that. I have no idea. But it's one of those names you hear and you're like, well, it sounds Scottish folksy. So, it sounds legit. So, what do you think of the Felix? Yeah, what did you think of the music then, Felix?
Yeah, I quite like the music. I like the way that it kind of builds up and just kind of gets more and more layers and more complex.
Yeah.
And it's quite jovial as well.
It is, yeah. It is. I mean, I mean, that's the thing about like folk music. I'm sure to a lot of people, it just sounds like quite cheesy. I mean, like, is it cheesy? Maybe it is, but like, I like that about it, and I think a lot of contemporary folk music can kind of get past that traditional folk music of just being like, I guess a lot of people might just say.
I think a lot of like folk music to me can sound quite depressing and like negative. Whereas
there is a lot of that as well.
There's obviously like a lot of good, well, not good, but like happy, like jovial.
But also, this is like, I think also a lot of traditional like jovial folk music. Essentially, it's been so overplayed in Irish pubs or like Irish themed pubs that I think people are just like, it's the Irish music. Whereas this is actually, doing something a bit different. And it's like,
I was also going to say, I think in a lot of people's minds as well, it's just like the river dance and things like that. And it's just like, that is, it's like that is peak cringy cheesiness. And it totally is not, because it's like, it's a rich tradition of music. It's totally not just that. I mean, it kind of is that as well, unfortunately. But no, especially so I've already talked about contemporary kind of folk music, and it's like a massive scene with tons of different, it's as diverse as anything else, really. But I really like this track, and the album art I think is also incredibly cool. They always have this like similar kind of pattern in their art, if that makes sense.
Right.
They have so I'm pretty sure they only have the 2 albums, but the other one is similar, like different set of colors and patterns, but ultimately it's like a circle in the middle.
And it's a really nice kind of theme to build around.
I think it is as well.
I really like the colours in it actually, and I like the fact that they seem, they have got like sort of subtle textures in the colours. So then, I don't like, it feels not quite watercolory, but it's not just like flat graphics, which is quite nice.
Yes, yeah. Are you looking at either of them or both of them, because they're both like?
We're looking at both of them, but I'm mainly referring to the current one, The Abyss.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like there's a seasonal almost difference between the two, if that makes sense. Like one feels like spring or summer, and this one's a bit more Abyss. Sorry, the first one is a bit more springtime, and that is called Beyond. And then this one is called Abyss, and it feels a bit more like autumnal or wintry, or just evening versus day, I guess. Is that kind of difference. But I think I always thought it was a bit of a shame that like artists don't kind of have more of a consistent theme throughout their albums that you can look at it and know that it's like, oh, it's an album by that artist. Like they change, not everyone, but they change quite radically. And I don't know, to have that unified theme is quite cool, I think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely more common with a lot of like electronic artists and like techno and stuff like that. Like they might pick a theme and then just like totally curate their visual style through that. I think Talisk have definitely done that.
I also like the way that they've styled their name and like made that sort of logo with like the triangle. That's also quite nice, and then that's also that consistency. But I think also like with album covers, where it's like even like the name of the band, the way it's written, like everything is different. It's a bit like kind of hard to know like that it's them.
Yeah. And I think that's probably like, you go back to like the 80s, 70s, and 60s, like albums are a big thing, and every album is a new release, and you have to, it's almost like you're not just the same band who's releasing a new album. You are, in a way, you've got a brand, but in a way, each album is an independent thing. And I feel like maybe that's changed a bit now, because a lot of bands now get most of their revenue from like live performances and touring and merchandise, that you kind of have to have that overall brand or identity. But I actually think it's quite cool. I think it's a cool thing to do.
I think it's also because like back in sort of I guess 80s backwards, because it's not like there was the internet. Unless you were super famous and being interviewed by magazines, it's like the only way your fans know about you is through an album. So then it's like each album you're trying to give them like a new bit of information. Whereas now, because it's like, I'll follow bands and I won't necessarily know what their album is, but like I know what they're like because I follow them on Instagram, which is kind of a weird thing now. So then it's like they're kind of giving you that sort of personality in a different way.
Yeah, totally. It's just a different way of branding now, isn't it? You're not like, you don't have to go to Rolling Stone magazine. Like who even buys that anymore? These things really confuse me. It's like, it kind of reminds, the question I always ask is like, who reads music reviews? Like, who buys Pitchfork and reads a review? Just listen to a song online and decide whether you like it yourself. And if you don't,
well, like things like NME that have been like a magazine for absolutely decades are now digital only.
Oh, is NME just digital? I didn't even know that.
Well, as of like 2 years ago, I think.
I think it's like before it was more important because you'd want to know, am I going to waste my money on this album? Whereas now it's like, well, just listen to it and decide.
Yeah. Like even if it's online, I don't know why I would read someone else's review unless it's just like, that's kind of what like this podcast is about. In a way, like you can just talk to someone and talk to other people who are like introducing, like, I would never listen to some of the tracks you guys sent in this episode, but I don't need to ask you for a review for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't even see the value of me saying, well, this Animals by Pink Floyd, maybe it's a 3 out of 5. I was like, what does that mean? Like, who cares? No one cares. And it's just a totally different way now of like conceiving of band identities, and the review things are kind of an aside, but you just have a band identity, and that's kind of what you put forward, and you don't need to be interviewed by Rolling Stone magazine or NME or Pitchfork, and you don't inherently, I'm sure some people still do read the reviews and go buy it, they must, but you don't need to. You've got this brand identity. You said Instagram before. Like, how many bands aren't on Instagram now? Like, it's or Instagram or Twitter or something like that, where you can like put forward your brand, and it's a bit more
kind of hard,
I guess,
to be honest, if you weren't on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or like TikTok or something, because a lot of the time people might not necessarily look up your like or even Spotify. Like if you're not on any of those places, like a lot of people just look you up and just go, oh, can't find them. Oh well, that's it. Interest's gone.
To be fair, I am guilty of that. like sometimes that's the thing. Like, I'm sure there are bands who do actually have CDs but aren't easy to find online. That must happen occasionally.
But I think a lot of the more newer bands, I can't really say fit in both, because there's probably a lot of people that are just like, no, analog only.
Yeah.
But like it's just so much easier to grow a user base if you can easily access people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was going to say, I just wanted to say that the artist for this album cover was someone called No One Boy, who's a Sligo artist based in West Ireland. But again, he's someone that
Cool.
it was quite hard for me to find who it was, because you Googling it, you're looking like you have to eventually find the credit listed somewhere. And you're like, oh, is this guy? Right? And then you Google him, and like he's got a website, and he's got like tons of nice art that he does. And these people tend to do, they're like graphic designers or whatever, and they do like T-shirts and things like that. And it's just, it's totally different to a lot of, Pink Floyd would have gone to like a big studio artist or something like that who was very big. And who else am I trying to think? Like classic, not just Hypnosis, someone like Roger Dean, who was the artist for Yes. He's like famous specifically these days, primarily for doing like art for Yes. And it's oh God, Harry is meowing. Are you coming in?
He wants your attention.
Yeah, he does. He doesn't want in. Like, oh, monster.
Whiny bastard.
But yeah, it's just it's totally. I don't even know what I was saying before. It's probably nonsense. But we are now.
But it's true. It's like before there were some like household names of like these are like graphic designers who design records, whereas now it's like oh, I've got a mate that has Adobe. They are my album designer. So it's like the person that designs your album cover might not even have their own website. They might not even be like a designer in that kind of sense.
Yes, and I guess that is probably partly due to the fact that like big vinyls aren't a thing, and you don't need that name recognition of the artist, and you don't need. But I don't think album art is worse now. It's just as good as it ever been. But it's weird in a way that it's just as good. Like I think the Talisk album covers is as good as anything I've seen from. Well, not anything. They're not the best album cover in the world, but they're as good as lots of album covers from the 70s or 80s. And it's almost like wasted on my little screen on Spotify. Do you know what I mean?
But I think it is that thing of like, even though it's not that important anymore, it's like it's still just so ingrained of like, oh no, but we need good album art. And even, I mean, like every graphic design course everywhere is still full of students that really want to be like a record cover designer, even though it's like that's not really a thing anymore. But it's still like everyone has this mentality of like, no, but all our graphic design heroes, that's what they did, so that's what I want to do. And it's like,
I want to come out straight out of university and design record covers for these people, and it's like, no, that's such a small amount of work.
It's kind of sad in a way, like because I guess like things do change, don't they? And the model for like the model of like how to be a musician changes through time as well, and it must be the same for graphic designers. But when you look back and you're like, oh, I want to do it in the same way that someone before me did it, and it's like, no, you don't get to anymore. You should have been born 40 years earlier. Sorry, your fault.
Although it is cool that Spotify do now have this feature that I've only encountered a few times, where like if they have some sort of like moving animation or like looping bit of video, then it like fills your screen. So I feel like that almost could be like the new album cover where you just...
So like on like pop hits, so for example like the Eilish or whatever will have like segments of the movie music video just like looping. Because a lot of people will listen on their phone, it won't show it on desktop, and it will just show you that little thing, whereas it's more important to have like those cool video visuals.
I was gonna say, I have noticed that sometimes, but if I notice it when I'm out, I get resentful. I'm like, is this using up my internet? Is this if I download a song, does it download this animation as well? I don't know how this works. Or if you put it on your TV and it starts giving you all the little facts or something like that, or like a little bit of an interview, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. This is random. But then you get confused, or maybe it's just me being stupid, because it'll give you some lyrics, and then it will give you like a little fact, and I end up trying to read the fact to the lyrics and just go, what?
It's weird that it's like sometimes it will just be lyrics, and then it won't give you those next lyrics, and it will just be telling you a fact about like on the 3rd of June is when they wrote this record.
Well, I had it where they were giving me these facts, but I didn't know who the musician or what the song was, and it wasn't displaying that information. It's like I can't have this fact. I need to know who it is. Like what am I listening to?
Jeff wrote this song in 2015.
Yeah, like who's Jeff?
I do think me trying to read facts to the lyrics is just me being silly again. Sometimes you can't help it though, because you're stuck in the kind of. It's like because as I said before, I did English at uni, and you get used to like reading lines of poetry that when you go back to prose, you start going dum da dum da dum. It's just like no, that's not how prose works, Jacob. You get stuck in this habit. Anyway, a total change of genre again, which is back to techno. So this is Rotlicht, which I think means red light. My German is not very good these days, but I'm pretty sure it means.
Yeah. What's that album, Propaganda?
Propaganda by Oliver Huntemann. So is he German?
Yeah.
There's some very, very intense sci-fi noises, right? Yes.
Yeah.
This song is like the epitome of just a club in Berlin where everyone is wearing black and looking incredibly trendy.
Yes, yeah. And obviously completely mashed off their face, right?
Oh yeah.
There's like the sound design of like you got this like beeping, and then it kind of moves here, then it kind of goes up in pitch, and then it kind of drops again, and you get a slightly different noise, and then it goes up in pitch again.
Yeah.
Even more than the last song, this is the musical equivalent of a panic attack to me. This is just like again.
Maybe don't listen to it with really good headphones. Need a little bit more space.
If I listen to it in the background, I don't necessarily take much notice of it. But then as soon as you pay attention, you're just like, holy, because it's like there's like a bass drum, which is almost like a fast heartbeat, which immediately like gets your heart going. You're like, oh my god, like Jesus, is that my heartbeat or is this the music? And then that pitch just going.
Yeah.
I just feel like it could be in a sci-fi series or something when someone's like traveling at warp speed, but something's gone wrong and they're gonna like slam into it. I don't know, and they're just like slowly and they can't do anything. Like the G-force is holding them back. It's super intense, and I don't think techno's for me. That probably might not surprise you.
What?
I'm totally surprised.
Oh my! It's just. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's such a intense. I don't know how to else describe. Like it puts you in a specific place. Like like literally, I'm in a club in Berlin, and everyone's wearing black, and everyone's It just sounds incredibly German, and it's I
don't know. I see it as quite a chill song. Like there's obviously that like intensity. But if you just kind of separate that a little bit, everything else is really like slow and building and quite. I just find it really enjoyable.
I get what you mean. Like there are like what's the word? Ebbs and they're like ebbs and flows, even though the tempo is quite. It's not as if everything is like, but there's a few different ebbs and flows within it, and it goes up and down throughout. I do get what you mean. But I think
I like the intensity just because then you do get that drop that's incredibly satisfying.
Right.
Whereas there are some techno songs where they kind of don't ever go for the drop, and you're like, this is now just kind of repetitive, and I don't really know where you're going. It's just
like you've just stolen it from me. Like it's gonna no. Not this time. You've ruined it.
It's so funny because I think like the drop is like an electronic music thing, but every music has something like that where there's like a crescendo and then it comes down again.
Yeah.
Or it's like some version of the moment that it kind of. Not all songs have it. Like a lot of like straightforward pop songs or a straightforward rock song doesn't have it, but a lot of music.
Yeah.
You know, there's a point in the song that the whole thing kind of revolves around. And it's just weird how different genres do it in a different way. And I'm trying to think of, there are tons of, I guess, I'm trying to think of a folk song specifically. Like a lot of lyrical folk music does it around the lyrics, like maybe the last line.
Yeah.
Because you're telling a story, you get to the last line, you're like, oh my God, like it's a twist in the story or something like that. Or some of the musical, the instrumental folk does it when it gets faster and faster and suddenly it'll drop out.
Yeah.
But it all does it in different ways. And I find I definitely like that about any music. Not just like, it's a catchy song, but when it builds up or down to something, and then it changes direction. I think it's always like a super cool thing. It just happens that for me, techno just seems to be building for a panic attack. I don't know. It's really.
But then I also feel like this is also one of those things where I don't mind listening to techno in like regular life, but like for me, it is one of those types of music where it is so much better when you're seeing it live. But then also because it's great when you get that build up and you can just sense that everyone in the room is just there like, here it comes, here it comes. And like there's that kind of collective anticipation, whereas when you're at home, you're like,
yeah, and also I think the treble will be like super aggressive in your headphones versus being able to hear, like feel the bass just like kind of vibrate your body and just kind of move you.
Yes, yeah. No, I totally get that because there's something physical about loud live music that you can't get with these. But that's one thing. Like, I am probably unusual amongst music fans. I'm not really that keen on going to see bands live. I think I've said this to you before, Felix. I think like it just doesn't interest me that much. I like playing live. I love like
you're
playing
in
live.
a band though.
But that's what I'm saying. I like playing live. I just like people should come to see me, but I'm not going to go see them. Like, well, this isn't reciprocal relationship here. Like there's some people I've gone to see live and I have enjoyed it, but it's not massively necessarily what I'm into. And I going to like live jam nights, but then again, I want to be playing there. I don't know. It's a different thing. But I do think there's a difference with like rock music live. I think can be more unpleasant than like electronic music live, because if you get a really loud guitar, the difference there is that it sounds you can feel it attacking your ears, but electronic music you feel it kind of just hits you more of like viscerally. You don't have that I'm literally being fucking deafened by,
you definitely get that a lot of if somebody, because there's so many variables setting up like a live music event, that like somebody's guitar is too loud or like it just kind of fucks it up, and then you just got searing treble in your ears.
It's such a problem with, obviously most professional touring bands don't have that problem because they know what they're doing, but like a random small gig in pubs and like smaller venues, it could be a massive problem. Even actually I've been to see some like proper like world touring artists in venues, like let's say not in the last year obviously, but in the last few years. And there's one in particular in Bristol. He's really great. I love his albums. But then seeing him live, it just turned into a mess. And I think maybe it's just because it's all like analog instruments, like people playing guitar. Like there's like a few things vying for the space.
Like often there's like if it's like a super hard space, then it's going to echo loads. But then you've really got to rely on the sound guy to kind of equal out everything, because what could work for one band didn't work for the next. And like if he was supporting someone else, they're going to set it up for the main band, or vice versa. They might just be like, oh well, it's just set up like that. And if they didn't have someone that was skilled enough, or the like speakers weren't good enough.
Well, this is what we had. We went to download and saw Prodigy, and it sounded like a complete mess. Like you couldn't really distinguish any of it. But basically just because the sound guys have been setting up for, heavy metal bands all day. And then Prodigy turned up and they just didn't set it up right. And it's like, this is so annoying, because it's like, I want to see it, but it was just awful.
I find it surprisingly common. Like, it must be, I'm not saying it's an easy job. I'm not trying to say it's like the sound man's fault, because it must be a really hard job. I don't have a clue. But it's surprisingly common to just not get it right, and you can go and just so many bands I say so many, I don't go to it often because I'm not massively keen on seeing like live bands, but when I do, I'm just like, oh, it's a complete mess. And like I can see the bass player is moving his fingers, it looks like he's playing something nice, but I just can't hear anything other than the drum kit. Mainly it's always the drums and just like a mess of like guitar, and it's just like every person in the band is competing with everyone else in the band for their instruments to be heard. And it's like, no, you need to like lower sound so we can hear all of you. I can remember we saw one band, I don't know who they were, it was just like one of these sort of live gigs. And they had a girl playing the flute. No idea what she was playing. Like
up and everything. Like mic on the end, and like I think he was even playing into a mic.
Oh, she was so keen, and we were like, I just can't hear a thing you're playing. Like you could be miming. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame though. Yeah. But we've not discussed the album art for this.
Yeah.
Which is again similarly like it's not like loud or garish, but it's kind of intense, right? Like you look at it, just like wow, that's striking. Striking is the word.
I really, really like this album cover.
It is cool. So is is it supposed to be anything? Because it's like three people, one with a blindfold, or is it just kind of cool?
I think there's a bit of a theme because it's called propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think from this album was released in like 2017, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think everything since then that he's released has gone with the same visual style. So I think it's 2017. So I think since then it's just kind of kept with this striking visual style.
Yeah.
And this is all done by Anne-Marie Papas, who is a Swiss graphic designer.
Mm.
I think it's interesting because the fact is called propaganda, but then like because they've made it black, white, and red, which like in terms of history are like the general go-to colors for like all propaganda posters.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, totally. But it's like it's cool and striking, and this isn't a criticism, but it's like what does it mean? Which I don't think it needs to mean anything, but it's just kind of like it's just like a cool statement, which again I think is perfectly cool. But yeah, I think it's interesting that I don't know. I look at it, I'm like, yeah, he's definitely trying to say something, but I have no idea what. That's the vibe. I don't mean again. That's not an insult. Like it's like kind of the opposite in a way to like Roger Waters, who is like really quite pretentious about it. Like, this is a big allegory. Pigs and sheep. You're the sheep, little sheep. You all follow. Blah blah blah. You know, that kind of like it's a bit stuck up. But this is just like it feels like it's just cool, but it could be hinting at something. But I don't know what it is. I don't know. It's just kind of well put together, I guess.
I like the fact that also the people. I know there are a lot of album covers where people are looking directly at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that they're looking up. So you're almost looking at it like, what are they looking at?
Yeah.
Because it's like something going on behind you.
But that feels like another kind of propaganda type thing. If you look at like Soviet propaganda, there's like, maybe a worker who's like looking up and holding a flag and not necessarily looking straight at it. It's almost like hopeful or something, isn't it? That's almost like what it seems to be implying. But then it's very... Yeah.
It's definitely the same position you'd be if you were standing in a crowd looking up at a DJ or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also at like a leader.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's weird how it like has all these tropes that are like propaganda. Fits the album title, but at the same time, it's like it's not actually propaganda. It's just a cool picture.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool. But what was I gonna say? Yeah. Again, like the fact that one woman's in red and the rest are, I guess, in white. Just like what's he getting at? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just cool. It's just, as Will Ferrell says, it's just provocative. It's just
cool. as Will Ferrell says, it's just provocative.
No one knows what it means. It's just provocative, which I like. I think it's cool actually. Like it's art. It's it's allowed to just look cool. You don't have to be trying to make some kind of deep point. I think that's a thing too many people try to do sometimes. To be fair, I have no idea. This guy maybe he did think this is a very sophisticated political point. I have no idea. But the good thing about it is you don't need to get it to think that it looks cool. There we go.
No.
Yeah, it's accessible on multiple levels.
Yeah. What would you say your guys' favorite album covers are here?
I think for me, it's probably a toss-up between Propaganda and the original Pirate Material by the Streets. But just because that is one of my favorite album covers.
Yeah,
I'd probably still say Propaganda or perhaps Bayview by Project Smok.
That is very cool. That is
because it's very chill.
I almost kind of want them like someone to like make a computer game in that world. I just think it would
That would be really cool, actually.
It would almost
Totally
be
doable.
like Minecraft kind of styled gameplay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going completely off piece now. I'm just
I
talking
think
crap.
someone did make a game like that, some like space game where
Oh, yeah.
it's all like super low quality graphics, but it's all like bright colors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't remember what it's called though.
Anyway, that's the perfect place for us to finish. So, thank you very much both for your time, and thanks for the conversation.
Cheers.
Yeah, no, it's been really good fun.
Us.